Hi folks, I'm absolutely delighted that the second edition of the Jaipur Lit Fest Toronto is returning to Canada in its new virtual avatar this month. Canada has a long-standing association with the Jaipur Literature Festival where several eminent Canadian authors have participated in previous years. For example, Margaret Atwood, Jan Martel, and many others. Last year, we partnered with Teamwork Arts to launch the first edition of the Toronto Jaipur Lit Fest. We believe that the benefits that the arts bring to the economy, to building identity, pride, and a shared sense of values are absolutely indispensable. Jaipur Lit Fest provides an exceptional platform for global authors and thought leaders to engage with each other and strengthen our cultural, bilateral, as well as people-to-people ties. And I can't think of a better city in Canada than Toronto for this to come to fruition. I extend my best wishes to Teamwork Arts and the Jaipur Lit Fest Toronto organizers for another successful festival, this time virtual, and I look forward to seeing you all there online. All the best for a great festival.
Thank you so much, His Excellency Nadir Patel, for your kind words. On behalf of Namita Gokhale, William Dalrymple, Sonjoy Roy, and my colleagues at Teamwork Arts and JLF Toronto, I welcome you back for our second session of the day, Mahabharata, Adapting Ancient Myth for Modern Theatre, Devdutt Pattanaik in conversation with Ravi, Jain and Miriam Fernandes. This session is presented by Why Not Theatre, Shaw Festival and Canadian Opera Company. Join us for a conversation with famed mythologist, author and illustrator Devdutt Pattanaik and theatre artists and writers Ravi, Jain and Miriam Fernandes for a deep dive into the world of the Mahabharata through the lens of Jain and Fernandes' stage adaptation of the ancient text. The conversation will speak to the relevance and importance of these myths in our modern world and how these epic stories can help us unpack the chaos around us. Why Not Theatre's new theatrical adaptation of the Mahabharata takes a modern twist on the ancient Indian epic, with the session also providing a sneak peek into the process of creating the show, as well as its Bhagavad Gita mini opera. Mahabharata was commissioned by the Shaw Festival and the world premiere will be presented by the show in Niagara-on-the-Lake. The Bhagavad Gita was developed with the support of a creative residency at the Canadian Opera Company. Devdutt Pattanaik writes on the relevance of mythology in modern times. The author of 50 books and 1,000 columns, several with bestsellers, he's known for his TED Talks, his TV shows, especially Devlok, and his innovative views on culture, leadership, and Indian approach to management. Ravi Jain is a multi-award-winning Toronto-based stage director and artist known for making politically bold and accessible theatrical experiences in both small indie productions and large theatres. As the founding artistic director of Why Not Theatre, Jain has established himself as an artistic leader for his inventive productions, international producing and innovative producing models which are aimed to better support emerging artists to make money from their art. Currently, Seasick, which he co-directed, will be on at the National Theatre in London. His adaptation of the Indian epic Mahabharata will premiere at the Shaw Festival, and What You Won't Do for Love, starring David Suzuki, will premiere in Vancouver in 2021. Miriam Fernandes is a Toronto-based artist who's worked as an actor, director, and theatre maker around the world. Acting credits include Jungle Book, Prince Hamlet, Dinner with the Gods, The Snow Queen, and A Sunday Affair. The Living and the Soliciting Temptation. She is currently in development for a few new pieces that she's co-creating, including an adaptation of the Mahabharata, Three Pigs, and a new play called Partition. We are delighted to have Lonchora as the podcast partner for this session. This conversation will be followed by a Q&A. Please feel free to send in your questions by typing in Ask a Question box on your screens. All our sessions will be available to view on our Facebook and YouTube channels. Do follow our pages, JLF Lit Fest, across Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook to get notified on all our upcoming sessions. You can also visit our website, jlflitfest.org/Toronto, for the full schedule and information on our speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, we now present Mahabharata, adapting ancient myth for modern theatre. Over to you, Miriam.
Thank you so much, Kritika. Hello to everyone out there around the world. I'm Miriam, and we are so happy to be at JLF Toronto and welcome you to this very exciting conversation between myself, Ravi, and the incredible Devdutt Pattanaik. Just to give you a little bit of context, we're going to focus this conversation around Mahabharata as our company, Why Not Theatre, is currently creating a new adaptation of the story for the stage. So today we'll be having a conversation and sharing an excerpt of a work in progress of our Bhagavad Gita, which is being adapted into a Sanskrit opera.
Okay, so before we jump in, just have to say it, Devdutt, Miriam and I are so excited to be speaking with you. Honestly, it's a career highlight. All your work has been such an inspiration for us, and Jaya in particular was a huge inspiration for our adaptation of the Mahabharata. But before we get into that, I would love for you, so I was introduced to your work first from your amazing TED Talk. I think it was from 2012, but in it you discuss how understanding culture is necessary to understanding how people live and think. And you propose an important way to understand culture through myths and stories that people grow up with, and that these stories really help understand the fundamental differences between Eastern and Western thinking and philosophy. And I'm just wondering if you wouldn't mind summarizing that just to set us up.
Sure. The first thing one has to know is the word myth, which we use normally, emerged in the 19th century. It's a Greek word which basically means stories. But in the 19th century, it somehow came to mean fiction. So when people, even today, they'll use words like myth of COVID to mean wrong things that you know about COVID. So the word myth is used as a synonym of fiction. However, from a linguistic literature point of view, from a postmodern point of view, myth has a very different meaning. Fact is everybody's truth, fiction is nobody's truth, and myth is somebody's truth.
Uh-huh.
So it's every culture has its own truth. Some people believe you live only once. And if you believe you live only once, which was the thesis of the TEDx talk, when you believe you live only once, then that in that one life, you want to achieve everything that you want to achieve. But if you believe you live many lives, then there is no hurry because there's another chance and another chance and another chance. So Indian stories are located in this idea of multiple lives. You don't live only once, you have another chance. So there's no stress that this is it. This is the only opportunity we're going to get. And there are two very different ways of looking at the world. The Chinese way is altogether very different. The African way is even more different. The Australian way is very different. So every tribal community, every community of people has its own imagination of the world. And that's the idea. And we express our imagination through stories, symbols, and ritual. And that binds us. So that when we say that this is Indian culture, we mean there is an imagination binding these people. When we say Navajo Indians think in a particular way, we say the Maasai think in a particular way, people of Kenya think in a particular way, the people of Finland think in a particular way. So every part of the world, when you say New York thinks in a particular way, it means its imagination is bound by stories, symbols, rituals. And Indian stories, symbols, and rituals tell us about the Indian way of thinking. So if you want to access Indian thought, you access it through Indian stories, symbols, and rituals. So that was what the TED Talk was about.
And it's so great because we were chatting with you on the phone the other day, and this idea of time that you talk about that's so fundamentally different between East and West. In the East, it's not linear, it's cyclical. We had shared a little excerpt of our Mahabharata with Devdutt, and you immediately picked out the line we had started with in the beginning. Yeah. And you said, no, there is no beginning, there's no end, there just is.
Yes.
I mean, for Ravi and I, who are straddling the worlds of East and West, and our cast and our story is straddling these two worlds. As storytellers, we're always looking for climax. We're looking to build towards something and have a climax and a denouement, but that's a very Western storytelling style.
Yeah, you see the whole idea of telescoping. So it's like the seed and the fruit. So what comes first, the seed or the fruit? So the last scene, is it the fruit that you're going to bite into, or does it contain a seed that will lead to another tree forming? And that's the fundamental difference that you see. So the Mahabharata comes from a tradition where there is no beginning and there is no end. So when you say in the beginning, for me, the first thing is Genesis. It's Eden. We are talking of the world coming to, we use words like the world was innocent. And this is what happened. You see this in a lot of storytelling, that in the beginning, all was innocent and all was good. This is not the Indian storytelling. The forest always existed. There were always predators. There were always prey. There were always rivals. There were always allies. And things happened in the middle of the forest. One of them was the Mahabharata. So.
Yeah, but it's so fascinating because it's that feeling of, because we grew up in Canada, or that's our influences, inevitably we're going to think in that way that is dominant, that cultural dominant of that one life thinking, that sort of Aristotelian rising action, climax, denouement, that way of thinking. And that's been a real journey, I think, for us in this Mahabharata. So just to share with you, I grew up, in Indian immigrants in Canada. So, Mahabharata was in the background on the television screen growing up. So I kind of had a little bit of it, but as you say, nobody ever sits from beginning, middle to end. So I had pieces of it. And in university, I learned about Peter Brook's production, which was really fascinating because here was this story that was I was supposed to have a connection to, and I saw it through the lens of all this international people, which was a really strange experience to have. An experience that was at once familiar and at once distant and foreign. And so when I started working on this play, it's been about a 5-year journey. And as Miriam mentioned, we've been working with a cast from all around the world, from the UK, from Australia, from across Canada. And what's fascinating is, in the process, we started with Jaya, and we would read it. So we'd read Mahabhisha and Shantanu, and we'd read it as you told it. And then I'd say, okay, go away and, tell this now in your own words, in your own perspective, and just how would you tell it if we were sitting at dinner? And so the British actors would come and they would interpret it by talking about the rave or the pub or using drugs or just whatever kind of cultural, language and phenomena that they had in Canada. And especially at the time when we were writing that draft, it was around Me Too. So there was a real feminist kind of lens, and the cultural influences that we all had from our places were informing the text that we had a draft that was so far away from what Mahabharata was that we had to re-find it and come back to Jaya's story structure, and another writer, Carol Satyamurthy, that's closer to the Sanskrit sort of structure and storytelling, and come back to try to tell it. And it's always been a challenge to find, what, as writers, we have to have a point of view on the story. We have to interpret it, but how to interpret it on its terms and not our terms.
Yeah.
And the challenge of that, I'm wondering if you...
No, the thing is also, one must be careful. Mahabharata is not a Sanskrit text. Please understand that. This privileging of language is a very dangerous thing to do. Mahabharata is an idea. Ideas don't have languages. So language is really a tool to express it. So story, because I have to tell you a story, I have to tell you in a language that you know. Speaking in Sanskrit or Latin or Greek or Hebrew or Aramaic doesn't make it a great idea. The idea is great irrespective of the language. So we must be first very clear with it. I do not like Sanskrit snobbery that is very popular amongst people with very limited understanding of culture. When you go to Tirukuttu performance in South India, it is done in Tamil. So it's a living theater which is done on the roads, on the streets, in the villages. It's done in Tamil. And you can't go there and say, oh, that's a wrong version, because it's not in this Sanskrit language, which was only spoken by the Brahmins, which was not accessible to women, which was not accessible to the Dalits. That's not correct language. This was a language that the author who put it down on piece of paper decided, because maybe his audience understood Sanskrit. But it is the oldest non-Sanskrit version comes from my mother tongue, which is Odia, Saraladas Mahabharata. And there are vast variations between the Sanskrit Vyasa Mahabharata and the Saraladas Mahabharata, which is in the 13th century. So you have various, there's a Tamil Mahabharata, there is a Telugu Mahabharata, there is a, in Hindi Bharata poetries, which was written by Priyadas in the 14th and 15th century. So you have to see the tapestry of these stories, and there is something common amongst them. This is what binds India. India is bound by these stories, but nobody has heard the Sanskrit version. Right. Let's remember that. Nobody has heard it. It's written in palm leaf manuscripts. They were written and they were compiled about, it's only 200 years ago in the Bhandarkar in Pune, they compiled these versions from across India. They realized that the critical edition was created in the Bhandarkar Oriental, but it is one language. It is not Odia. It is not that. So when you're speaking in Canada, you can't speak in Sanskrit, and it's nice to it. There's an exotic flavor to it and makes it very magical. But imagine hearing the Gospels in some Aramaic. I will not, under Latin or Greek. I mean, the audience will say, no, we want to hear it in language of which I understand. The idea is important. The idea. Yeah. That's the soul of the story. To quote Krishna, the flesh is just a fabric that you wear on it. What matters is the soul inside. Meaning, idea, your play. What is an Natya Shastra? What is an actor called in the Indian languages? Patra, a vessel. A vessel which contains an idea. So when you come on stage, you are merely a vessel for an idea. You are nothing more than that. The idea has to reach the audience, and when the audience is inspired, so you're a patra, a vessel. So and the vessel may think, oh, I'm so great, but that's not important. What is important is, have you been able to transmit the message? Then the magic has happened. That's when people stand up and give a standing ovation, not to you, but to the idea that has transformed them.
That is such a beautiful way of expressing that. And I think it's something that Ravi and that we're thinking about a lot, because yes, there's the language, there's the spoken language, and then on top of that, there's a theatrical language of how do you interpret, how do you show these stories, as you mentioned, that have been told in so many different spoken languages, theatrical languages around the world over thousands of years, and how do you transmit the core ideas. And so as we've kind of gone through this process as time goes on, my own understanding and Ravi's understanding of the story has transformed, because the meaning changes with the context of what we're living in. So during Me Too, it means something different. During COVID, it means something different, and you pick out different parts of the story. And this one of the ideas that we've kind of been, that has continuing to come back to us, is an idea of justice. And it was amazing to speak with you the other day, because you also differentiated between the ideas of justice and empathy, and the importance of understanding empathy in terms of understanding Dharma. And can we talk about the distinction there again between justice and empathy, because that really changes the story.
That was mind-blowing for us, honestly. Like, it's so, we both got off the phone and we said, we're so lucky that Mahabharata got postponed, because we can go back in and make edits.
I have to deal with this all the time, because you see, dharma is a word which Indians use a lot, and sometimes rather mischievously, we will say that, oh, it's difficult to appreciate. You can't pronounce it in English. So this is one way of sort of positioning yourself as, oh, we are so great Indians. We had concepts which are greater than humanity. And no other human being other than a brown-skinned person. It's brown snobbery at one level. Let's not, mince words on it. The fact is, dharma is a concept It's a very powerful and central concept, and it is rooted on the idea of rebirth. Remember, I began by saying that there is no beginning, there is no end in the Indian thought. So Buddhist, Jain, and Hindu ideas is anadi, there's no beginning, ananta, there's no end. This applies to the world, and this applies to life. So your life and my life has no beginning or end. We go through circles. So our lives go through transitions. Then when we die, that itself is a comma. That's not a full stop. It's a comma. And then we get a different body and we have new experiences, but we carry forward experiences of the past, almost like DNA. The way DNA carries forward over generations and generations and generations, you are paying the price of the nutrition of your grandparents and your grandparents. If there is a genetic anomaly, it passes on. So there is this concept of karma, which is strong. Now, when you have a culture which believes in one life, there's a beginning and there's an end, and the culture which believes there are many lives, so cyclical, goes on and on and on, the attitude towards justice is very different. So in the West, when I read a Bible, I am very struck when I go to Sistine Chapel and I see the concept of Judgment Day. So you have God standing over there making judgment. In Islam, it's called Ayamat. At the end of the day, you will be asked, have you been good? Have you been bad? Have you followed the law? Is it halal or haram? Have you done good? All those concepts are there, right and wrong. And if you've done good, you shall go to heaven. And I'm paraphrasing, and if you've done bad, you will go to hell. This is an idea which comes from Zoroastrianism. You find this in Christianity. You find this in Islam. To a degree, you find it in Judaism. It's not so strong in Judaism. It's there but in the height of judgment, you find this even in the Greek mythology. Will you go to the Asphodels fields? Will you go to Elysium? Will you go to Tartarus? So the Egyptians had it. Even the Egyptians have this habit. The pyramids were built. Then you have thought, measuring your heart and saying that, okay, this is what is going to happen. Your heart will be measured against the feather. And if it is good, bad, indifferent, we will decide where you're going to go. So judgment is very common in ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, in the Christian traditions, in the Islamic traditions, and I said to a small degree in the Jewish traditions. But in the Hindu tradition, God is not a judge. There is no judgment. There is because there is no beginning or end. So the idea, so when I hear words like justice or social justice, which is so common around the world, I keep asking myself, in Indian philosophy, how will I apply this? Because there is no judgment day, there is no qayamat, there is no book of law, there is no commandments against which a law can be fought, a judgment, battle can happen. There is no concept of judgment day. What you have is accounting. So God is an accountant. He's accounting for your actions and deciding, okay, what have you done? How much debt do you owe to the world? Is there debt and repayment? Debt. So you have to repay your debts. If you have got debts, you will not be allowed to die. You have to be reborn and on till you repay your debts. It's called rin. You have to repay your debt, your ancestors, which is one of the problems when Bhishma makes this great vow, I will never get married. As a young kid, I would always wonder, what's the big deal? He's not getting married. What a lucky thing. Why is it such a great Bhishma, flowers falling on him and everybody's getting excited? He just wants to not get married. And it never made a sense. I would ask my mother, and my mother said, shut up. Nobody else. Don't ask me. You don't respect religion. This is all this nonsense. And then you realize the thing is, if you don't get married, which means it's basically saying you will not produce children. If you don't produce children, how do you repay your debt to your ancestors? If you don't repay your debt to your ancestors, you cannot be reborn. You are trapped in the land of the dead forever. Yeah. That is why Bhishma is called, oh my God, you've taken this great vow for your father to satisfy his desire. You are saying you will trap yourself forever in the land of the dead. You are forever trapped. You will never come back because you didn't produce children, which is why Indian parents are obsessed with Indians getting married. Get married, get married, get married. Because, it's a cultural thing now, but the thing is, if you don't produce children, that's how culture is designed. You have, so that's what it is.
Yeah. And with that, just to go to, because one of the ways to repay the debt that you talk about is in the concept of Dharma, the idea is the burden of responsibility for civilization is for the mighty to take care of the meek. And that's a different kind of idea, that there's responsibility.
Yes. So, when it comes to debt, so the rich have a lot of debt. They come with a lot of debt. So how do you repay your debt? You repay your debt through generosity, through kindness, through empathy. See, the fundamental difference over here is, as all living creatures, in the nature, the strong eat the weak. The strong eat the weak. That's the nature. All animals do that. It is the mighty eat the meek. Humans are the only creatures with the ability to take care of the meek, to help the helpless. So that becomes the human burden. So when you are born as a human being, you carry the debt of being a human by expressing yourself through empathy. And if you have not expressed through empathy, you are in debt and will be reborn again and be reborn again till you learn to show empathy. So the weak have to be taken care of by the strong. And in the Mahabharata, you have two parties, five brothers with 7 armies, and then you have 100 brothers with 11 armies. Very clearly, one is strong, one is weak. And the question is, how do you share? Who takes care of whom? Who supports whom? Who empathizes whom? Now that defines the justice, if you want to use the word, But it is, do you show empathy? Are you repaying the debt of privilege, the debt of entitlement, the debt, all those debts that you carry? You have 100 brothers. You have more wealth than anybody else. You are in debt. You owe society. So that's the closest you come to social contract. It's not exactly social contract in the Western sense of the word, but it's the closest where the culture comes together.
It's so beautiful. And when you said that to us the other day, it just made it so clear why this story is so important and has lasted for so long. And for us, really why we want to retell it again. And just to jump back to that conversation about a theatrical language. So basically, our Mahabharata, we're taking this ancient story and we're telling it over 7 hours. And there's 3 parts to it. The first part is looking at all the ancient ways it was told, the languages. So like you were saying, shadow puppet theater, masks and dance performance, Kathakali performances, using Kalaripayattu as a vocabulary, an ancient martial arts employed into the storytelling. And it evolves over time to the second part, the middle part, is a community meal where all the audience gathers. We all share a meal, and one storyteller tells the story of the yaksha, which we try to summarize all of the exile in that one story. I know it's a bit ridiculous, but the idea, though, is to get to the experience that, people experience this story and this message of empathy in so many different ways over time. And in the final part, it goes to something more contemporary, projectors, fancy theater stuff. And one of the things we try to do is, in the second part, we tell the Bhagavad Gita in an opera style. And part of where that came from, and we're going to show a little clip in just a second, but part of where that came from was trying to find a way to express the heightened hugeness of this moment where God and man are having a conversation and God reveals himself. And we try to employ the Sanskrit in the telling. Just going back to the language, it's really interesting because we were using English the whole way through, but as a way of, again, engaging in the juxtaposition between East and West to try to tell this story. And so maybe we'll just share the video and then we can talk a little bit about it. Rajat, do you mind hitting play? I think it's going.
Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirvavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam
So the Bhagavad Gita is one chapter in the Mahabharata. The Bhagavad Gita literally means the song of God.
Well, how do you represent in the theater a conversation between God and a human? Well, you find the most epic form of storytelling that we have, and that's opera.
Opera and the Bhagavad Gita are just so intertwined because the Bhagavad Gita is an epic, and opera is such a heightened form of emotion that it just makes sense to put these Sanskrit words to Western classical music.
So we're bringing more Western influences, but still being keeping to the tradition as much as we can, just to make it all more relevant to what we see in the world around us today.
It's kind of a meeting of the worlds and a connecting of the cultural dots. You have actual drama as well as the musical side of it, and it just becomes this thing that blows open emotionally and expressively as well.
It's really remarkable to see how these two worlds have combined and done so seamlessly, and I think Subha and John have done an amazing job with that.
So that was a little clip of our last workshop.
No, this is just too good, too good. You know, if I say something, it's really what is called theophany, where you see God in front of you. And, you know, when I heard it for the first time, I was like completely shaken because it gives you goosebumps. You know, it's what is the English word for it is horripilation. It's a word that you use a lot. In Sanskrit, the word for this is Roma Harshana, where the hair stands on end. And one of the storytellers of the Mahabharata is actually called Roma Harshana, the one who makes your hair stand on end. Another storyteller is called Ugra Shrava, the one who has a loud voice. So, you know, these are the words of the storytellers. But what is interesting over here is, let's come back to the idea of dharma. In dharma, you know, in nature, the strong eat the weak. But in the human society, the strong have to take care of the weak. The big have to take care of the small. You have to help the helpless. So that's the simplest definition of dharma. Now, when Krishna takes his infinite form, he's asking, now tell me which side I should take. Because in front of infinity, which is Krishna, the strong is also insignificant and the weak is also insignificant. In a simple mathematical principle. So the Kaurava army looks tiny in front of infinite, and the Pandava army is also tiny. And the scene shows that, you know, we use the word God here in English, but it's not God as in Jehovah, the creator of the world, not the judgment God. This is God saying that I eat both of you. I can eat both of you and spit you out. I can consume both of you. In front of me, you both are the meek. So which side should I take? This side or that side? On what, if I am the infinite, I am Ananta, then which side in this battle should I take? And I will take the side of the battle of those who don't, who need to be helped. So I will not go on the side of the mighty, I will go on the side of the meek. But remind the meek that when they were mighty, did they behave with dharma? Because when you read the story of the Mahabharata, when the Pandavas had all the wealth in the world, they were not the nicest people on earth. They were arrogant, they were pompous, they gambled away their kingdom. It's something we forget, that when you have power, when you have privilege, are you a nice person? And the Pandavas go through a phase where they do have power, they have privilege, and they are behaving like pompous brats. And that's what the exile is all about. The exile is about the Arjun, Bhim, all of them, when they go into the forest, they are being told by the animals that, you know what, when you had all the power in the world, you thought you were better than us, but you are an animal. And now you've been treated the way meek people are treated. When you become servants in the king's kingdom, you are abused the way you abuse servants. So that's what Theophany is all about, the presence of God to show the mighty and the meek their place, literally. And I think,
and you know what I love about when you describe it like that, it's you again, you're asking us to zoom out to look at the metaphor of the piece rather than the literal. And it's so easy for us when we fall into literal that it becomes like, I was just talking to my mother about this yesterday, and she was like, no. The Pandavas Krishna chose the Pandavas because they were good, and the Kauravas, they were bad, and that's just it. And these layers of how do we get an audience to be able to do what you're asking, which is zoom out to look at the larger scope. And that's what, what we were trying to do with the opera, is to access this script, this text, this story, this idea from a different kind of part of your brain in a way, right, Miriam?
Yeah, it was, it was funny because when we were writing it, the first script that we came out with, we gave it to the composers, John and Suba, and they said, this is way too long for an opera. Like time is different in music. Time is very different in opera. It takes long to express one idea. And so we had to really essentialize and try to come down to the golden nugget of what this thing was, which is actually an experience. It's not a logical, it's not something logical that you understand. The Gita, it takes you lifetimes, not even one lifetime, to understand. And so how to experience God, we wanted to create something that is a godly, divine experience, which is a choice to bring opera in.
No, and see, the thing is this, what you said, time takes a different thing. It is 700 verses. If you take it literally, it means you spent about 3 days in the middle of a battlefield giving this dialogue. It's not going to happen. Army is not going to, okay, let them finish their dialogue, then we'll start fighting. It's not going to happen that way. Nobody's going to do that. So this good, bad difference that people try to make, is simplistic. I always tell people, when you go to the court, the judge is reading the Gita, the defendant is reading the Gita, the criminal is reading the Gita, everybody reads the Gita because everybody thinks they are good and therefore they are the Pandavas. And everybody who reads the Gita assumes they are the Pandavas. In all probability, they are the Kauravas. And everybody says, this one is Duryodhana. He is Dushasan. But they'll all say, oh no, I'm the innocent Draupadi. I have been violated. And you are the one who violated the world. So, right, wrong narrative, unfortunately, it's unfortunate. That's a tragedy of English translation, and not just English translation. To be fair, the idea has not been translated. Dharma has nothing to do with right and wrong and judgment. Judgment is the one thing that Indian thought is very cautious about, because it says you have to also look at the cycle of rebirth. You're carrying grudges of previous lifetimes. There are so many grudges of previous debts of previous lifetimes that you're carrying in this current lifetime. So you have to let go of things, especially when you're privileged, especially when you have got entitlement, especially when you have estate, authority. You have been gifted with so many things that you must be more lighter. You must allow people, forgive people. If you are educated, you should be kinder. You've been blessed with knowledge. If you have the Vedas with you, then you should allow people to troll you.
And
that's an inside joke. That's
what I keep thinking about from this conversation about Dharma is that also it's not fixed. Like these ideas of right and wrong and good and bad, and I'm on the right side. None of that is fixed, because who is privileged and who is unprivileged in any situation will change. So in one point of the story, the Pandavas are the meek, and then there's a moment in the story where the Pandavas are the mighty, and you're constantly negotiating where you stand.
the story when they're burning the forest, right, to build the city.
Yeah.
Burning the forest. Now, all the animals are going to say, excuse me, you are not the meek, you are the mighty. You're burning the forest. So look at that story. Just look at that story. And that one story, at that moment, people have written poetries on it saying that, oh, the Pandavas burnt the forest. It was against ecosystem. But Krishna tells them that how do you build a city without burning a forest? How do you build a city? Tell me how do you build a city without burning a forest? And that is called Dharma Sankat, the ethical dilemma. If you don't cut the tree, how do you make furniture? Simple. You can live without furniture. You can. Of course, you can live without furniture. But if you want the furniture, you have to cut the tree. And when you cut the tree, you've destroyed an ecosystem. And every animal that you've destroyed calls you unjust, unfair, cruel. And you carry the debt of having cut the tree every time you use the furniture. So all the furniture are the dead body of trees.
Yeah.
And you have to live with that.
You have to live with that cost. Yes, yes. I'm just going to move us to some questions here. I'm getting some fired in here. We have about 5 minutes left just to say. So this one kind of links to some things that we were talking about. Someone asked, as Canadians say, the medium is the message. Marshall McLuhan. The medium is the expression of a story and matters as much as the narrative. So rhyme and verse and the original Sanskrit text. So how did the medium of expression impact its message? In terms of the Mahabharata, it's been told over time. It's traveled outside of India as well, right? To Bali, Indonesia, to many other Asian cultures and beyond. And I guess what the question is looking at is how does the form and the mode of expression impact its message?
I think the form is fluid. If you look at it, because it's theater. Remember, 90% of society, 99% of society is unlettered. All these societies got the Mahabharata not in a written format. They heard it, they saw it, it was performed, it was sung. And each time it was sung, it would be improvised upon. You would keep improvising because the audience participates in the storytelling. Indian performances, Natya Shastra, is like a live, it's very much like jazz. Jazz music is a conversation with the audience. Without an audience, you can't have jazz music. You can't play jazz music in an empty room. It needs the energy of the audience to create it. So you cannot perform any Indian theater without the audience. The audience participates in it. And therefore, the medium is a dynamic medium which is constantly evolving. That's the thing. You cannot do it in an empty room ever. The performance that you're doing, a good story in India has to involve the audience. That's why if you see of course, now we have got audio, video. These are new mediums which don't need an audience. So you perform very differently. But the older mediums were the performance is with the audience present in front of you. So the audience is bored, you change the story, you adapt. So you see this in Southeast Asia also. There's constant, the audience doesn't want to hear the story, change the story. Get the sex scene, get the violence, get the music, play the drums. Everybody's yawning right now. So come on, let's play the drums, let's play conch shells, and that's what you do. And if you see this, and if you look at the medium, there's a lot of repetition. They keep repeating the story again and again so you don't forget the theme. So that plays a very important role.
Yeah, that resonates so much, especially now when so much of our live theater experiences is digital. That lack of having the audience makes it so difficult to actually tell the story. I mean, it's like what you said. You want someone who makes someone's hair stand on end. Well, you need the hairs to be able to be stood on end, or else because
you can't do that.
Try to do it to yourself, like. Well, there are a couple more questions, but I feel like we're kind of at the last sort of couple minutes here. I just wonder if there's any kind of thing to leave us with thinking in terms of this message, and in terms of especially now where so many inequities are being exposed. And as you said, the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. There's so many inequities of race in the world that we're all in these dialogues. What is the place of myths, especially ancient myths, in helping us to understand the moment that we're in? And how can they be a kind of guide to help us through it?
When I see the media today, the language, what I call the westernized narrative, because there is a sense of apocalyptic vision that the two armies will meet and fight. When I saw the US elections, it was almost the language was apocalyptic. This whole
civil war is coming.
World is coming to an end, and there'll be the right and the wrong fighting. And I said, that's a vision of the world which is not universal. It's a vision of the world. There are other visions of the world. There are very different visions of the world. The Mahabharata offers a different vision of the world where you don't judge. You still fight for what you think. You fight for the meek. You work to help people, but there is no judgment. Because even in the Mahabharata, at the end of the day, I'd like this to people remember. At the end of the day, the bad guys go to heaven, and the good guys go to hell. And then the hero of the story, the Pandav Yudhishthira, goes to God, is very angry, and he says, this is wrong. Bad guys have to go to hell, and good guys have to go to heaven, right? That's what the algorithm says. That's what it should be. And God says that, when you are alive, the Kauravas, the bad guys, the villains, refuse to share earth with you. And when you are dead, you refuse to share heaven.
Amazing.
What's the difference? If they refuse to share the earth, you refuse to share heaven, when will bliss ever be yours? You will never be at peace. You don't share. You are not generous. That's dharma. At the end of the day, dharma comes down to generosity. And if you are claiming the villains were not generous, you, the heroes, are equally ungenerous in paradise.
And again, I think what's so beautiful is what you're saying is it doesn't let anyone off the hook. We're all responsible. We must stay responsible. And there's no easy kind of cut to it, right, wrong, easy peasy answer. Sit in the confusion. We're just at time. Devdutt, I just can't thank you enough. The way you clarify these complicated ideas, the way you express them with such hilarity and joy, it's so inspiring and so amazing to be able to speak with you as we're also navigating this text. And I just want to say to the audience, just get his books. We're at the Literature Festival. Get his books. There they are.
Marked up.
Marketing.
There's a million of them online. Order them. We're Why Not Theater. Our website is whynot.theater. Sign up to our newsletter. Stay in touch with us. Jaipur Literature Festival. So grateful to have us here. Devdutt, you're amazing. You're just, I hope we can say this. I hope we get to see the show.
Thank you. Both of you guys are doing wonderful work. And the opera, I think, I'm waiting for it to come to India. It must be done. Open air theater. It'd be like
Sanjoy's on it.
Thank you, Devdutt. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. Thank you, Ravi and Miriam. We look forward to the opera in 2022. This session was presented by Why Not Theatre, Shaw Festival, and Canadian Opera Company. We encourage you to buy the books of our speakers, available through bookstores listed on the Toronto website. Once again, we'd like to thank all our partners and supporters for being there for us. We hope you all enjoyed the conversation and will tune in for our next session, Food, Memory and Culture. Meeru Dhalwal, Joshna Maharaj and Asma Khan in conversation with Sanjoy Roy. This will be at 12 noon EST, 11 a.m. CST, 9 a.m. PST, and tonight 10:30 p.m. IST. Thank you once again for watching, and we now present a reading by Nicole Hartley from the Jaipur Writers' Short Series.
I'm Nicole Hartley, the reader and writer of this piece. I'm joined by Emily Fonda, who did the choreography and movement. We're from Sylvan Lake, Alberta, and I'm enrolled in the Humber College Creative Writing Grad Certificate Program. The piece that follows is titled Not Ready to Die Yet.
How many people, given the chance, would want to know how they are going to die? 60%, I would guess, or 10 to 15, according to Google. Well, put me on the list, I'll know her. I'd save myself. So much time without the constant pleading. I'm not ready to die yet. Maybe I am. Sure, my body isn't my home. I'm the guest that's overstayed my welcome, awkwardly waiting for me to kick me out. But despite how often we discuss it, God, in the shower, after morning coffee, during sex, there is never an answer. I'm not ready to die yet. I'm not ready to live. I need more practice, please. I haven't felt that last love yet. I haven't written the book. I haven't tricked myself into caring about myself yet. But maybe someday I could. The leaves have fallen. Leave not yet. If I go now, I'll miss next summer. And the one, and the one, and the one after that. At this point, I'm pleading. Here we go again. What if I'm a soon-to-be hero? What if one day I'm supposed to save a life? Maybe they'll still say hero if I stop my own knife. What if ending it is the saving thing to do? The hottest day hasn't come yet. I'm still learning the piano, and I just bought that new dark blue lipstick. Remember? We can even rearrange the furniture right now if you just get up. Just get up. You want to play hardball? Fine. You have something the world needs. How dare you take it away before it's been used? And what about Mom? You fucking monster. That would be slaughter. I am vacant to hold space for others. All my happiness is borrowed, comes in equal portions with panic. So why would I want to live then? When grief comes hot on the heels of joy, twice as tall. Put me on the list, I'll know her. Let me save myself. The time. Just the time.
Teamwork Arts, bringing India to the world and the world to India through Indian art and culture for over 30 years. One of Teamwork Arts' signature events, the Z Jaipur Literature Festival, is the world's largest free festival of its kind. With daily interactive sessions, lively debate and dialogue, and international music performances every night, it's no wonder the festival attracts over 500,000 visitors a year. The Jaipur Bookmark, an international B2B event for the publishing industry, happens during the Z Jaipur Literature Festival and sees a confluence of publishers, writers, and literary agents. Teamwork Arts, producers of the Z Jaipur Literature Festival, have taken the flavor of the festival to international shores with vibrant events in the UK, Australia, and the US. Teamwork Arts takes India's artistic diversity to the world with almost 12 festivals of India across continents in a stunning array in over 40 cities. A feast for the senses, these are spectacles of dance, music, cinema, theatre, literature, and so much more. In each of these places, Teamwork Arts' colourful festivals of India are the high points of the annual cultural calendars, be it Confluence in Australia, India by the Bay in Hong Kong, India by the Nile in Egypt, Iron India in Chicago, Shared History in South Africa, India in the Sunshine City in Zimbabwe, Edinburgh Fringe Festival, Kala Utsavam in Singapore, Sarang in South Korea, festivals in Abu Dhabi, Shanghai, Sweden. The list is dizzying. The Jazz India circuit is an endeavor by Teamwork Arts to spread the word and sound of jazz across the country. The 2017-18 season, 4 festivals across 3 cities featuring over 25 stellar artists from India and around the world, including Jojo Mayer and Nerve, drummer-singer Jameson Ross, and Dave Weckl, who collaborated with the talented Mohini Day. The Mahindra Kabira Festival celebrates the spirit, lyric and verse of the 15th century mystic poet Kabir in his birthplace, the historic city of Varanasi. Kabir's poetry is about inclusiveness. Mahindra Kabira brings to music lovers an unforgettable experience of listening to leading exponents of the classical Banaras Gharana and rich folk traditions of music on the legendary banks of the mighty river Ganges, along with sessions on art and literature, specially curated walks with famous local residents and delectable local cuisine. Sacred celebrates the spiritual through music and its ability to heal. International artists collaborate with world music exponents from India amongst the most incredible desert settings on the banks of the Pushkar Lake. Heritage walks, meditation, talks, and workshops are part of this weekend experience. Teamwork Arts so promotes and recognizes the best of Indian theatre through the Mahindra Excellence in Theatre Awards. The Meta Week in Delhi is an enthralling showcase of the 10 best nominated plays shortlisted from numerous entries received from across the country and across languages. The Meta Lifetime Achievement Award has been presented to leading lights of India's theatre industry. For the young and the young at heart, the Ishara International Puppet Theatre Festival brings local and international performances to audiences across several Indian cities. While the Multi-City Kahani Festival features interactive storytelling sessions and workshops championing the power of imagination. Bollywood Love Story, a musical. Our international touring productions such as Bollywood Extravaganza and Flamenco India have sold out shows across Europe, Egypt, Russia and Spain. Expressions International Contemporary Dance Festival showcases Indian and international productions, bringing together several dance genres for Indian audiences. Teamwork Arts, celebrating the arts. For more information, visit www.teamworkarts.com